Much for joining me for today's lecture. We are going to look into the jobs related to clinical trials. But first of all, what is a clinical trial? A clinical trial is a set of activities that are performed in order to test the safety and efficacy of a drug, of a medical device, or of any other pharmaceutical product. In order to perform those tasks, we will need to have a protocol, meaning that we're going to write down who are our participants, study participants. We're going to look into how we are going to measure what exactly, what is the rationale for doing the clinical trial, and then we are going to go over the visits. In each visit, what tests we are going to perform, what is the drug about, what it does, what are its safety concerns or issues, what are its therapeutic uses, and then we will ask patients to be enrolled in the study. They will come to the hospital or to the again physician's office, and then we are going to draw their blood, testing their blood. You don't draw the blood, of course, but what I'm saying is that we are going to ask them to go to the lab or to have someone to draw their blood, to get other samples, and then we are going to receive the data from the patient. Now, that type of data can be qualitative data or quantitative data about the patient, about the age, gender, and then we are going to look into different biological, I would say, data before and after the intervention. Now, the intervention can be sometimes again a surgical intervention. It may be an implant, it may be using drugs, and we are going to look into before and after the intervention. This is why we always have interventions before starting, I would say, sorry, data before having an intervention. We call those data the data baseline data, and we have visits that are happening before we start any intervention with patients, and we call those visits baseline visits. They are going to be used as a control for us. So before any patient being exposed to the intervention that we are studying. And then we are going to ask the patient to come every day, every week, every month, depending on your protocol that you have to have written, of course, beforehand. And then we are going to get the data at the end of the study when we have our last patient, last visit. We are now going to close the study, and we are going to now start to look into preparing the data, cleaning the data, reviewing the data, of course, making sure that the data is not out of range, or for example, for example, we may mix up, for example, 1 and 7, for example, or 6 and 8, those numbers. We may have some missing information, missing signatures as well. So we're going to go over cleaning the data, and then we are going to do our statistical analysis that will help us to show that the intervention that we had was effective or not. And then we are going to write clinical summary reports related to the study that we have done. And we are going to have several studies with several clinical summary reports. We are going to use those reports when we are going to apply from Health Canada the registration of the drug. And we have, of course, to go over several clinical trials. So let's talk about the job itself. Here I'm showing you a clinical trial job. I went to eluta.ca, eluta.ca, and I just used the keyword clinical research. And it came up with about, as of today, 8,499 again studies in Canada. I would say I'm talking about the jobs. And then, of course, some jobs are in hospital. Some of the jobs, they need a nursing degree. The majority of them, they don't need a nursing degree. You may also ask if this is a regulated job and you have to be a member of any association. I tell you right now that clinical research associate job doesn't need anyone to again become member of any association, because this is not a regulated job. That's why. But what you need exactly in order to become qualified to apply for those jobs. So I'm going to go over, again in summary, going over just one job description, which is exactly this is a job that I just found out a few minutes ago before joining you today. So here again, this is from a company. This is a medical lab which is called Dynacare, but it can be any pharmaceutical company, a hospital. It can be a physician. It can be a company that is making vaccines. It may be a cosmetics company, a natural health products company as well, because they all do research in order to test the efficacy and safety of their products, and they need to have those proofs in order to have their products registered, not only in Canada, in any other country in the world. Now, if we are in Canada, we will need to prepare, of course, an application to to have our protocol approved by Health Canada. If you would like to do your study in the US, you are going to make an application and send it to FDA because you would like to test your drug on the American soil. But the overall, the requirements for having, I would say, for getting this job is to have one certificate in bioethics that you can, of course, get for free from the government of Canada. Go on Google and search for TCPS Core 2. TCPS Core 2. It's a 6-hour training and you will be able to pass it. It's going to go over the ethical considerations for research involving humans. So it's TCPS, standing for Tri Council Policy Statement. You also need to have several other certificates that you can get again as per the, I would say, like corporate level certificates. I usually recommend the Crown College of Canada because this is where, again, that's an institution that is offering the same, I would say, with the same quality of the education. They are offering very low price certificates. The website is crowncollege.ca. crowncollege.ca. And as I said again, as I said to all of my students, if you're a student or you're an alumni, you will be able to use a coupon code. So since you are here at New Circles, Crown College of Canada has a convention signed with an agreement with New Circles where you can just go to the website at crowncollege.ca. You're going to choose any courses that they offer, just courses, not the internships, and you're going to use the code or the coupon code Canada when you are at the checkout page. Okay, so you can always go there. You have to just subscribe for free, of course, on the college website, and then you will be able to add those courses into your card, and then you can use the coupon code Canada for getting 90% off of all of their certificate courses. Now, for clinical research, you need to have a certificate in GCP or Good Clinical Practice. This is the one that you can also find on their website. You also need to have again a certificate in clinical data management. Okay, again, you have that certificate as well. If you would like to get more responsibilities and to manage projects, you can get a certificate in strategic project management, or you can also have a certificate in clinical project management. But what exactly they do is that they are going to go over different tasks in clinical research, and then you're going to be trained on what are those tasks, how long they would take, and then you're going to become more familiar with managing projects in clinical research. Now, let's go over what is exactly involved in, again, the clinical research coordinators or associates, I would say, life. So what you will do again is that, for example, I'm just going to choose a few of those, I would say, requirements, okay, for the job. One of them is that you are going to contact and negotiate with the staff from other departments if you're in a company. You're going to, again, work on patients' files. You are going to be responsible for documentation of data discrepancies, negotiation of resolution of discrepancies, and you may, for example, work with or in the contract research organizations or CROs. You will also need to maintain files for each sponsor. This means each company that is paying for the research, because you may be in a place where, again, you are having 3 or 4 studies at the same time on different drugs, and then you are going to deal with the management of the documentation. You will also look into, of course, again, working on, different, I would say, tasks that are involved in clinical trials, such as, getting the data from the labs, because your patients will have to give their biological samples to the lab after the analysis. All of the data is going to be sent to you, and you will need to add the data into a web interface from the place where you are working. So if you are, for example, in a hospital, you are going to be exposed to some interfaces. We call those electronic data capture, or EDC, and you're going to receive the data and add the data gradually after each visit of a patient into the system. You will also be, involved in other activities, such as writing reports, such as writing even safety reports, because if patients, for example, are experiencing any untoward medical occurrence, because of the use of the drug, we will need to prepare reports and send them to the sponsor, and the sponsor is going, or the pharma company, and they are going to send those reports to Health Canada. So here the activity is called pharmacovigilance, which is the science of collection, assessment, reporting, and preventing adverse drug reactions. So as you see in a nutshell, this is the job of a clinical trial associate. So every day you go to your place, you are going to look into a protocol. You're going to have a protocol with all of the study visits. Now you are going to receive maybe 10, 20 patients every day. Each of the patients will be in a different visit, and each visit may have different tests. So you're going to manage those patients for passing those visits, for providing their data, now the administration of the data, data entry, and of course communication with different stakeholders, such as the principal investigator, such as patients, such as the study sponsor. So this is the job of a clinical trial associate. If you would like to know more about that, of course, just go to glassdoor.ca, go to eluta.ca, any place.ca, of course, where we are going to post different jobs related to clinical trials now, associates or coordinators, and you are going to get to know more about all of the responsibilities. Now, we may say, for example, here I'm going to show you what they want from you is any science related or medical related experience. Okay, so here for this specific job they talk about science related or medical lab certification. It doesn't mean that you need to have a medical lab certification, because again you don't do only you don't do the I would say medical tests or analysis. You're going to deal with documentations and regulations. This is why anyone having minimum a bachelor's degree in any related field to the I would say biology or physiology will be able to apply for this type of jobs. Now, some of these jobs they may require a nurse, obviously, of course, but not all of them. Based on my own experience, there are about 20-25% of jobs where they require nurses, but don't forget that these are nurses who must also have the the same trainings as you have, in addition to being a nurse. But again, it's just 20-25% of jobs available. They also want you to be able to, again, look into the vital signs. You can learn them, which is not something difficult. They want you, of course, to be sociable, because you're going to deal with several patients. And don't forget that those patients, they may have some disease conditions. So you will need to be very clear in your communications. You will need to be very systematic. You have to again be very ethical as well. And in addition to again these, you're going to be in compliance with the rules and regulations, meaning that, for example, when you are going to have the first time a patient coming to you, you will need to go over a document that we call an informed consent, which is a document written based on a protocol in a lay language, so that you are going to talk about the study protocol to each patient, explaining to them what is the study about, that this is an experimental drug, these are all of the visits that they have to come, and of course you also tell them about their rights. And based on the ethics, bioethics, the right of a patient is that they can stop coming at any time, okay, from to the study without no penalty. You may also have some type of compensation that the sponsor is going to give to patients, not as an incentive. This is not, of course, a salary, it's unethical. But what is ethical here is to compensate patients for the time that they are spending instead of working to come to research. Or if, for example, they are coming and they are taking the subway, for example, we are going to compensate those patients. Okay, so the same thing, it is also a job of the clinical again trial associate or coordinator in order to explain all of those different conditions and rights to patients during the time that we are going to go over the informed consent. What is interesting is that imagine that you're having 500 patients in a study. You have to go over 500 informed consents, and each of those would take about 1 hour each. So in any site when we do clinical trials, we don't have only one study coordinator. We may have 2 or 3 study coordinators, and they are going to, of course, work in shifts, or they are going to, again, I would say, again, look into who can do what. But at the end of the day, they will end up, of course, doing all of these activities at different times during the day, because at the end, don't forget that in clinical trials, the first thing which is important is patient's safety. And the second important point is data accuracy. So this is, again, what happens when you go to your working environment. You're going to deal with patients, with doctors, with nurses, with documentations, with computers. You're going to deal with emails, and you have, of course, to do obviously lots of multitasking as well. So this is just again an example of a job description that I found on again on eluta.ca, eluta.ca. But you can go to any of these web pages where they are again posting their job descriptions. Now let's go over the pay, because you would like to know also how much is paid. For this, I went to Google and I typed Canada space pay scale space clinical research, and of course it showed me several jobs, but several web pages, but the one that it chose was this one, which is the clinical research associate or CRA salary in Canada. So as you see, it is about the median salary is about $71,000. If you want to look into this per hour, is about 20, I would say $30 per hour. And again, this is coming from 113 salaries that have been, I would say, noted here. Okay, it doesn't mean that this is exactly this. It may be a little bit higher or lower, but what you can see is that if you would like to start with, I would say, an entry-level job, you're going to have about $55,000 per year, which is a good salary when you're going to start a job. And then based on whatever was reported to this website by the 113 people, professionals, they gave us this type of graph where the highest salary among those 113 people was more than $100,000. You can also see here on the right the entry level, which is again for the hiring. Again, this is based on 113 people. Is that you have a lower rate of I would say recruitment. However, you have to analyze that. What happens is that entry-level job means someone with no experience at all. Early career, those who just started. But I tell you that those who are in early careers, they're going to stay where they are, okay? Unless for some reason they have been laid off or maybe their job was restructured. I don't know more because, again, I don't have access to all of the information from this website. But what I'm telling you is that when we are going to hire you, we look into your minimum bachelor's degree relevant to medicine, biology, physiology, anything in health sciences. And then we will also look into your transferable skills. So if you have, again, you're a person who has been working in groups, working in projects, or you had also some research projects when you were in your bachelor's degree or master's or PhD, this is also a very valuable experience, and you have to add it into your resume as well. So I'm not going to really rely on about the I would say decrease or increase of again this the rate of recruitment, because performing research is something like I would say like food, like health. We cannot stop research. We are having more and more drugs and devices coming to the market, and we never stop paying for doing research. On the other hand, what is also interesting is that all of the companies that are paying for research are getting a tax incentive equivalent to up to 125% of the investment that they are putting for starting to test a drug for a safety or efficacy. This means that many companies are going to do research. And again, you can just look into the big pharma companies working with vaccines or any new, again, the drugs that we are seeing every day on the market, that they never stop doing research. So what I'm saying here is that no, this job is having entries like any other job. It may take about up to 3 months, 4 months maximum in order for someone to search for a job. I would say at least sending 5 times per day their application, and then to get usually for every 30, 40 applications, you may receive again a phone call, or you're going to have an interview on the phone or maybe on the Zoom. And then obviously what we can see based on the I would say the job, the recruitment and the Statistics Canada, of course, we can see that this job is also among the hot jobs. And I'm of course going to show you in the next again website that this is again based on the known I would say data that I'm talking about this. So now when you are going to start working in clinical research, are you going to stay there? No, you can grow. You're going to just work as a clinical research coordinator, and then you're going to get into data management. You may now, of course, we do data entry, and even if you search for the data entry for clinical data entry jobs, you will see that the average job is about $70,000, so more than clinical trial associate jobs. That's because these are people who do know about clinical trials, but now they know enough in order to understand the data, put the data into again in some interfaces, and then even to clean the data and contribute into statistical analysis of the clinical data. And as you know very well, people who do have this type of experience in data analysis can work in healthcare, they can work in the automobile industry, they can work in any type of industry, in the finance as well, because we are not dealing with data. But because of the fact that you also have your background in a bachelor's degree minimum related to physiology and biology, and again, I would say a science field, it's much more easy for you, people like you, to do the data entry and then to clean the data and then also to do the management of data. It means that for writing those clinical study summary reports, we need to create tables. Usually for a study that lasts maybe 1 year, we have to have a team of 5, 6 people to do the statistical analysis over 3 or 4 months. If we need even to write an article, because some again investigators, they write articles as well, if the company agrees with, of course, it may take another 3 or 4 months. So for people who do have experience in writing studies, in doing data analysis, in again showing the data using different types of graphs, for example, and then to be able to write again study summary reports that are very similar to the thesis, or even reports or study reports that you have done during your bachelor's degree or master's or PhD, you see that this is a very good job, and you are now going to use your skills. Your skills is not just knowing about the vital signs. Your skills is also to do the data analysis, to be able to write, to get, I would say, a ton, I would say, I don't know how to say that, but at having a ton of data, okay, from different sources, and then to give a pattern to the data, doing the analysis using statistical tests, if these are, again, quantitative data, even if we use qualitative data for descriptive statistics as well, and then to come up with conclusions based on the data of a clinical trial. So as you see, you can start as a CRA, but you have lots of place to grow. One of them is, of course, to become a data analyst, which is clinical data analyst. One of them, again, is to become a project manager, a clinical project manager, where you are going to deal with several people. Each of those people are working in a pharmaceutical company on different aspects of the study and in the regulatory affairs departments, where we are dealing with the registration of a product and with the communication with regulatory authorities such as Health Canada. So as you see, this is it's an excellent, to me, this is an excellent entry-level job where you will grow, and you may not even, again, just stop at $100,000 per year, but you are going to be able to, again, reach $130,000, $150,000 when you are going to become a clinical project manager, when you are also going to maybe involved in pharmacovigilance and again safety reporting activities. You will also be able to go into places where you're going to write your study summary reports, and obviously ultimately you may also become a manager, and in this case you will be able to manage not one study but several studies based on the experience that you did accumulate from the time when you started to, again, to do the job as a CRA. So it's a very promising career, and again, everything starts just with entry into those studies. Okay, so now that again we talk about the salary, and again you can go to, can search it on Google, for example, or on Bing, on any search engine. You search for Canada space pay scale in one word, space, and then the title of your job. Here I chose a clinical research associate job. Of course, I'm asking you, when you have time, to go and look into other jobs related to clinical research. Now you may say, okay, but what exactly is happening when we are doing research? In this table that is coming from a clinical trial protocol, I am showing you the table of the study visits. This is related to phase 1 clinical trials, where in phase 1 we are just going to look into the clinical pharmacology. It's okay. You don't need to be a pharmacologist in order to run this trial, or even to be a clinical research associate. What you need to focus on is the column on the left. This is where you are going to look into the tasks that you will be doing, or you are going to manage as a clinical research associate. So what is that exactly? First of all, we are going to go over the informed consent, and we are going to make sure that the patients who are going to be recruited, they understand well about the the risks and benefits of the drug and the study. They know about their rights, and then if they are okay, they will sign their consent, the informed consent, and then they will be recruited. Once they are in the study, another job that we have is to review and confirm their eligibility. We do have forms that we call, case report forms. This is for collecting the data. It's like data collection sheets where CRAs are going to complete them, and they are going to, of course, check if the person is meeting all of the inclusive criteria and they don't meet any exclusion criteria. Then another job that you will do is to ask about the medical history of the patient. If you are in a hospital, obviously you have it already in the system, but still we have to confirm. If we are not in a hospital, then we are going to talk with the patient, and this is your job to go over a meeting of maybe 30 minutes, 1 hour maybe per patient, just to go over the medical history and to fill out the form, because we need to have the information about the patient as well. Then we are going to do the physical examinations. Now, if you're a medical doctor, if you're a nurse, or if not, you may be trained on looking into the vital signs. You are going to look into the vital signs. And then we look into the height, the weight, and then for the tests, we are going to ask the patients to go to a lab, or we do have people who are, for example, doing phlebotomies, or they are able to assist in order to get the biological samples from patients. They're going to put them in refrigerator, and then they're going to send them to a medical lab. But anyways, we are going to facilitate those actions. We are going to facilitate those tasks, and then we are going to receive the data from those labs, and this is our job. So your job, in order to add the data into a web interface, we call that an electronic data capture, where electronically we are going to add the information. In some countries, in some hospitals, we still have this process that is being done by hand and by forms. So we may have to add the data in a form in paper. But that's our job. Then for this study, is not for all. Here they have the viral and HIV screening, okay? And again, it's not the case for all of the studies. Then you're looking into the vital signs. You are also going to ask the patients to go over and have a 12-lead ECG, and then you are going to receive the ECG and comments from a doctor, and then we are going to add this into the patient's file, because as a CRA, we need to manage the documentation related to each patient as well. Then we also need in the visits, we have the clinical lab and blood and urine analysis or urinalysis. We also look into the previous medication. We look into any concomitant medication. We also may want to ask the patient, if it's a female, to look into the pregnancy and have a pregnancy test, because this is one of the conditions of the study. For example, that patients must not be pregnant, because it's not ethical, of course, to test a drug in a pregnant population. You can also look into randomization of the patients in different groups. If you have several groups using a lower or higher dose of a drug, or if you are comparing the effect of your drug with an existing drug on the market as a competitor. So these are all examples of tasks that are done in a study. But now, do we do them every day? Not necessarily. And this is where, again, this job of a clinical research associate or a clinical research coordinator, in order to look into this table, looking into, looking into, okay, I can go over that as well, looking into different days and to see, okay, when a visit is taking place. Is it day 1? Is it day 0? And depending on the days, we do have different tests. So let me see if I can go back to what I have. Okay, perfect. We have it here. Okay, I'm not going to touch it anymore. So here, what you can see is that we have different days. Day 1, and here we have day 2, day 3, day 4, and as you see here, we are not having all of the tests at each visit. Each day in a visit is going to have a specific test. And again, who is managing that? CRAs, or of course clinical research coordinators or CRCs. Okay, I don't use abbreviations because sometimes they are not really, they are not known by everyone, and it depends on again in which context or in which industry we are. So using again the terms as clinical research associate or clinical research coordinators, this is again what is the job of people who are doing this type of jobs. And of course, at the end, you can also have follow-up visits. You may also need to contact your patients up to 30 days after the end of the trial, just to see if they are okay, if they're having any issues. You may also want to ask them some questions, because maybe you may have a questionnaire that you have to also complete, talking with patients after a month after the end of the study. This is for the again safety concerns. Perfect. So this is just in a nutshell an example of a clinical study, I would say visits in a table. And we see again that for each visit we do have different tests. Once we have our last patient, last visit, we can now stop having more patients because that was the last patient. Now we are going to stop all of the clinical activities, but now we are going to start looking into the data that you have been adding into the web interface or into a database. And again, this data is now going to be analyzed. And for the analysis, we are going to look into the trends. We're going to look into descriptive statistics, looking into inferential statistics depending on the type of data. And based on the variables that we are going to see, based on the comparison of the data before and after baseline, we will be able to draw conclusions on the safety and efficacy of the drug. So this is what a study a coordinator or a study clinical study associate is doing. Now, you may want to know, okay, where I should go to make sure that I'm going to write properly, using the proper terms, my resume. So don't forget that you need to have certificates. You cannot just go and say, look, I do know that by heart, or I did research for 20 years in another country, so I would like to do research here. No, what happens is that when you are changing your country, the new country has its own jurisdiction, has its own regulations, and you need to have your certificate in bioethics from Canada if you would like to work in Canada. You need to have your certificate in GCP or Good Clinical Practice in Canada from a Canadian institution, because you're going to work with Canadian regulations. Obviously, we know that if you are working in a Canadian company, but the company has also an office in the US, in Europe, in other countries, yes, in this case, if you are preparing for different documentations for the preparation of packages, for applying for getting the authorization to conduct a clinical trial in other countries, you may or you may not be involved. If you are involved, obviously, it's also good to know about the good clinical practice in the US, which is called CGMP, standing for Current Good Manufacturing Practice, very similar but not identical to Canadian regulations. But again, what I'm saying here is that when you're working in Canada, you need to have your trainings, even if you have to do them again, in a Canadian institution, because you have to also learn about the Canadian regulations and rules. And even the website that we have, the one that we use is Health Canada website. We're also going to use Food and Drugs Act, and then we're also going to use, again, Canada Food and Drugs regulations. You may be dealing with medical devices. We have a Canadian medical devices regulation. We have a Canadian cosmetics regulation, a Canadian non-prescription and natural health products as well. And in Canada, we also have studies on cannabis, because this is a legal medical cannabis, and we can also conduct clinical trials on cannabis as well. So again, you will need to redo your certificates in a Canadian institution in order to get to know about, again, the Canadian rules and regulations as well. This is not what is taught in other countries. Now, coming back to this website is called ONET Online. You can again search that on again any search engine, and it gives us a very valuable information about okay what we need to have, what are the qualifications that we need, and what we do exactly. So for the clinical research coordinator's job, what we can see here is that they're talking about the specific information such as scheduling subjects for appointments, procedures, or inpatient stays as required by study protocol. I already explained a study protocol. I talked about the schedules, about the visits, about some procedures, tasks as well. And I did it on purpose so that when we would reach to this web page, we would be, it would be more interesting and more understandable for us. So what are the jobs? Related to this job, what are the tasks, and also what are the requirements, what qualifications you need in order to apply for this type of jobs. So the second one is to perform specific protocol procedures such as interviewing subjects. I talk about the informed consent, but I also talked about the fact that you may have your data collection sheet that we call case report forms, and you may need now to have some discussions with the patient about their medical history, about their concomitant medications or previous medications that they were taking as well. You can also again take their vital signs. Some again you can do this under the supervision of a doctor or a nurse, or again they can be done by again different I would say assistants, but you may also do the same thing as well. And then if you can also do the electrocardiogram. Don't forget that for that job you also need to have some specific certificates. But again, a clinical research coordinator is not to do necessarily electrocardiograms. Okay, your job is to look into the overall management of a study, of a trial, looking into the documentations, looking into the communications, dealing with patients, dealing with studies, making sure that the study is up and running based on the protocol and based on the table that I showed you about the tasks and all of the visit dates and which task or which test is going to take place as which exact I would say visit for each patient. And then we can look into, for example, to inform patients or caregivers about the study aspects. This is again the informed consent, or to prepare study-related documentation such as protocol worksheets, procedural manuals, adverse events reports, institutional review board documents, or progress report. So these are the tasks that again is a clinical research coordinator or associate is going to do. Now for the technology, we want you to be able to use scientific softwares. When we talk about SPSS for statistics, this is in case one of your job descriptions, your job requirements is to do the data, I would say the statistics. But if you just want to add the data into a data collection sheet or to use the electronic data capture, you may not need to use SAS or SPSS or MATLAB at any cost. And even if you have to, you can always take a few courses on how to use these statistical software. Don't forget that I would say if we hire a clinical research associate, we are not hiring a statistician. Okay, so here we are asking you to do the data entry. But of course, if you do the data management, you can always, working with a statistician, you can always prepare tables as well. Those tables or those trends or any type of graph that we make is for mainly for writing the study summary report as well. So you need also to know about how databases are working. Here for this examples, we are talking about several softwares, but don't forget that we cannot ask you to know all of these softwares, and you don't know necessarily what type of software is being used in any company. So this is where you have to rely to your transferable skills where in an interview you can say that yes, I know how to use database like Microsoft Access, or I know how to, I have experience, 10 years experience in working with different web-based interfaces. So, okay, so this is just to tell you that we don't want you, of course, to be an IT person. Now for object or component oriented development software, we talk about Python or R for statistics, okay? Again, here, you're not going to do programming with Python. You're not going to necessarily use R as a statistical software. You may or you may not, but it doesn't mean that for each and every job in clinical research you need to know how to program Python or how to use R. So what I'm saying here is that these are just I would say technology skills based on what different companies provided to this website. But at the end of the day, as a clinical research associate, you're dealing again with the documentation, with the communications, with the management of the study protocols. If you would like to get more responsibilities, you can learn how to use statistical softwares. You can always do the statistical analysis if you would like to, which is a plus for you. But if not, the job itself is a full-time job, as I already mentioned. Now, for the spreadsheet software, we use Excel. We always use Excel. Usually, it's a common knowledge now. And video conferencing software, they talk about Google Meet. And as you know, Google Meet is not the only video conferencing software. So again, these are just technological skills. If you have any transferable skill or experience in Zoom or any other, or Skype, it's a little bit old, but Skype as well, you can, okay? It can be any, but we just want you to be able to use or to be able to learn how to use the software that we use in a setting. And you cannot know necessarily what are the softwares that we are using in a setting. And there are so many softwares out there. So always rely on your transferable skills or your experience working with similar softwares and write in your resume and talk about that in your interviews as well. Now for the work activities, I already explained. We talk about documentation or recording information. You have to do organizing, planning, and prioritizing work. This is why I always, again, recommend to my students to get a certificate in project management. Again, you can go to Crown College of Canada, again, crowncollege.ca, in order to get a certificate at a very low price, using, of course, the 90% discount that you have for, again, learning about strategic project management. Okay, you don't need to have a Ph.D. in project management. Okay, we don't have it yet, but you just need to know, okay, what are the tasks, what are the timelines, what are the sources, and then juggle with priorities. And of course, you also need to know about the documentation. But the volume of the work required in project management in an IT setting for making a software is very different from the volume of the work and the nature of the work that you have when you are doing a clinical project management. Okay, don't forget that as well. So we just want you to be able to manage a project and of course to have it up and running within a budget, within the resources, within the timelines that we already set in advance. And of course we do our best, of course, to complete a project within these parameters. Now we also want you to work with computers, but you know what? Sometimes you are maybe a Windows, again, I would say, expert or using Windows for many years, but suddenly you go to a place where they are having Macintosh. Okay, there is no problem. You're going to learn because you already have your experience working with computers. So don't forget again to rely on your transferable skills all the time. When you look into job descriptions, don't be intimidated by saying, oh my God, but they're asking so many of these, softwares and I don't know none of them. I don't know about none of those. No, look into your transferable skills and your ability to learn, because we don't want you again to know from in and out about the system. It's almost impossible, but we want you to be able to use a system as per the standard operating procedures that we are going to give you. And you can learn for that. It takes time, of course, but you're in a new place, new setting, new equipments, new softwares, new people. Obviously, you will have to do an extra effort in order to, again, get used to different changes. And between us, we always say that the only thing that doesn't change is change. Okay, so now I'm going to let you again explore this website as well, looking into a detailed work activities, looking into the work context, and of course where you're going to apply for different type of jobs. And then here, of course, you can for the training and credentials, as I told you, you need to have minimum a again certificate in bioethics from Government of Canada, which is free and is online. You can search for that. It's called the TCPS Core 2. And then you also need to have minimum a certificate in GCP or Good Clinical Practice. You can get it from Crown College of Canada. And again, use the coupon code Canada because, again, you are at this seminar, which is funded by Immigration, Refugees, and what is that? Not refugees, immigrants, refugees of Canada, okay, and Citizenship Canada. And again, just use the coupon and benefit from this discount as well. Now, if you would like to know more by, again, getting a certificate in strategic project management, do it. If you would like to know more by, again, working on your skills and your knowledge on clinical project management, take that course as well. But those courses are again, already sufficient for you to become qualified to apply for the job as a clinical research coordinator. Now here, I just wanted to go over this page as well. If you would like to know if you need to have any certification, or not certification, but any type of affiliation with any association, clinical research is not a regulated job. You can see that on this web page as well. You can also search for that in Ontario government web site as well. If you want to become a nurse, obviously, a doctor, a chiropractor, a dental hygienist, a dentist, dental technologist, etc., dietitian, massage therapist, you need to be member of an association. But for a clinical research or clinical trials, or to become a clinical research associate, just check the job descriptions, and they don't have the right to again make it mandatory for anyone to be member of any type of association, because we have more than 30 different associations, maybe just in Canada, on clinical research. But again, none of them is regulated, none of them is necessary to become member of, unless you would like, of course, to again be member of an association, just to maybe go to different meetings that they have. If not, again, once you have your certificates, you become qualified to apply for jobs. Okay, so look, this is what I wanted to talk about today. I hope that you again enjoyed today's lecture, and again I hope that you will have time to go to this website I already showed you and go over again the different tasks, technology skills, work activities related to clinical research coordinators or clinical research associates job. So thank you so much for your attendance. Take care, my friends. Bye bye.